Welcome, food enthusiasts, to this issue of the FutureFoodCastPodcast. I'm Pam Miller, your host for today, and I am very interested to hear what Mitch Cobb has to say about his businesses that he's got going on. Mitch, welcome to the Future Foodcast.
Hey, Pam, thanks for having me.
Yeah. As you know, we're very interested in trends and innovation that's going on in the food space. And you have exactly both of those going on with your business. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you ended up there?
Sure. So my name is Mitch Cobb, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Upstreet Craft Brewing, which is located in Charlottetown, PEI, which is way up on the east coast of Canada. So Upstreet produces a line of craft beers. We make craft sodas, make a line of vodka seltzers called Rewind, and most recently launched a line of non-alcoholic craft beers called Libra. Yeah, I mean, I guess, we've been in business now for 7 years, and we started as a lot of craft breweries do. My business partner, Mike Hogan, who's our head brewer, was a home brewer to start. And we used to help him brew beer on Sundays. And we got started talking about creating our own craft brewery. And it kind of grew from there into something much bigger than we ever anticipated.
That is very exciting. And 7 years is a good track record. I mean, the fact that you're still going strong and expanding. Two things that I heard in there. I mean, the craft beer itself is very popular, but the seltzers is definitely a trend that has been going on in the industry, but that non-alcoholic piece as well. Can you tell us about what you're seeing in those?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen quite a big explosion, a real growth in non-alcoholic beverages in general, but specifically non-alcoholic craft beer. I mean, this was something that we started working on back in 2018, and it sort of came from a place of, after being in the craft brewing industry for a couple of years, I had sort of hit a wall, I guess you would say. I had gained 50 pounds. I was living the lifestyle of someone who owned a craft brewery and a bunch of restaurants, and, really wanted to start focusing on my health and wellness. And as part of that journey, first cut back on craft beer and then decided to cut out alcohol pretty much altogether. And it really sort of got me thinking at that time, what would it take to create a really great tasting non-alcoholic craft beer? I still wanted to go out with friends. I still wanted to have all of that experience that craft beer provided. But, I didn't want the alcohol. So we kind of set about kind of doing a bunch of research and development, trying different methods of creating non-alcoholic craft beer, and finally landed on our own process, and launched about a year and a half ago. And we've seen tremendous growth in that category since we launched.
Well, I can't see all of you, but you don't look 50 pounds overweight now. So I guess that was a successful journey you went on.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I ended up losing 80 pounds, actually.
Oh, okay. Congratulations. So you felt like you had 50 extra, but really you had more than that, and you're feeling good now.
Yeah, I'm
that's
feeling great.
That's a great note to some of our listeners, because I know based on the title of this episode that a lot of craft beer enthusiasts are going to be listening in who might really like the taste of the craft beer, but in excess, as you brought to light, sometimes that can be a problem. And also the alcohol piece of that. If you wanted an alternative that had the same great taste, but not the alcohol in there, because a lot more people now, right, are wanting to go party with their friends or celebrate or watch the football game or whatever it might be without the alcoholic piece of it. Is that part of the trend that's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because when we started looking at this and when we started talking to people, and telling them that we were going to create a non-alcoholic craft beer, we got some funny looks, and it was a lot of the same, like, what's the point of that? There was a perception, that non-alcoholic beer was only for people who, couldn't drink alcohol because they had issues with it or they had health reasons that they couldn't consume. And what we've really seen in the last little bit is that, it's really younger people kind of driving the trend who, are interested in their health and wellness. And it's not necessarily a complete abstinence from consuming alcohol. I mean, we're really lucky that we have a tap room and on PEI, we sell Libra, our non-alcoholic beer, through the liquor stores. So we can kind of get some data points. And what we're finding is that it's not necessarily people coming in and choosing to abstain from alcohol, but really it's people coming in and choosing moderation. So they may come in after work and they may have a beer, but they want to stick around for a little bit. So they have a couple of non-alcoholic beers, or, they're coming in for the weekend and they're buying, maybe a 6-pack of Pilsner and buying a 4-pack of non-alcoholic craft beer. So it's really, people are really using it as a moderation tool that allows them to not necessarily have to consume alcohol, as much as they were previously.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to what I was thinking about, a lot of times when I'm going to enjoy a beer, it's during some kind of sporting event that I'm watching with friends or we're going to, and I don't necessarily want to be drinking the entire 2 to 4 hours that I'm there. And it's a great alternative to be able to mix that up. Instead of having a beer and having a water, I could have a non-alcoholic Libra instead. Are there any other ingredient considerations? I know some people have trouble with beers, and there are beers that are made like without the gluten. Maybe there's ciders, people that have issues with some ingredients. Do the non-alcoholic options bring any of that to light or handle any of that?
Our non-alcoholic beers still contain gluten, so we make them the same way that we produce our regular beers. The process is exactly the same, the length of time is the same. We just sort of make small tweaks along the way, but in terms of the ingredients, all of the ingredients are the same. So we are starting to experiment with like gluten reduced non-alcoholic beers, and so we're kind of in the early stages of exploring what that would look like.
Yeah, good. I mean, it's not a big section of the market. I was just wondering what might be happening there. And I bet that's why you have such great taste, is that you are mirroring the process that you've already developed that's successful for your Upstreet craft beers that you've, well proven over the years to be really great. Well, talk to me about, I saw as I was doing a little bit of research that you were awarded a workplace award about last year this time for workplace excellence. And in the food service industry, which you're a part, there's a lot of workplace issues. What do you think got you to that award, and what's different about you? What's positive about what you're doing? What challenges are you having? Can you talk to us about that workplace culture a little bit?
Sure. I mean, workplace culture has always been to everything that we do. And it was really one of the driving forces as to why we started Upstreet, was to create a community, and a community, people who work at Upstreet, but also a community of people who come into Upstreet, and also to give back to the community. So that's really always stayed front and center for us. In 2017, we got our B-Corp certification, and I can probably talk a little bit about B-Corp in a bit, but we were the first company on PEI to receive the B-Corp certification. And actually, we're still the only company here on Prince Edward Island to be B-Corp certified. So, that has really sort of driven us to make sure that workplace culture stays front and center, and so it has been difficult, especially on the restaurant side of the business. It's been extremely challenging for restaurant owners, but also for restaurant staff. Up here in Canada, we've been having a lot of just coming out of a shutdown again, where our restaurants were closed down for 2 weeks, and this is probably the time, and this has happened over the last 2 years, as we're all aware. So, maintaining staff has been incredibly difficult, and so we've worked really hard. We're really lucky that we have a production side of the business. So when we have these shutdowns or things shift, we're able to kind of move people around and keep them employed, so we don't lose them, because we certainly recognize that, labor shortages are looming pretty large. In terms of the things that we do, I think one of the biggest things that we've done, and it's not necessarily around compensation, although I think that compensation is certainly important and the sort of the perks of the job. But what has set us apart is our ability to include everyone and to be transparent, staff, to involve them in the planning, to make them feel like, they're really part of the company, and that their ideas are heard, that their questions are answered, and, that we're showing them along the way, what we're doing, and we're explaining to them why we're doing it. And I think that's really had a big difference in making the entire team, from, the people serving the beer or the people packing the boxes, right up to the top, feel invested in the company and really believe in what we're doing.
Yeah, Mitch, I think there's a lot of satisfaction for employees to not just feel like an employee, but sounds like they're part of the Upstreet team. And that's a differentiator for you, is you want to hear from them. You want them to be a part of it, especially during some of the challenges that we faced over the past few years, couple of years here with the pandemic and the shutdowns. One thing I heard you say was, we try to move people around to keep using them. I know that you were able to shift, your government allowed you to shift to being doing the delivery of your product, which didn't happen before or people could come and pick up outside of your locations. And that was a game changer for you probably during the pandemic, to be able to keep things going and keep people employed.
Yeah, and I mean that's a really great example. When our tap room closed early on in the pandemic, and our provincial government allowed us to start doing delivery and curbside pickup, really quickly our tap room turned into a fulfillment and distribution center. So all of our staff who would be serving, were able to come in and pack orders and hired them on as delivery drivers and let them use the company vehicles to deliver the beer. And that was huge for us, and it was interesting because we had to kind of turn it over really quick. We went from I think the government made the announcement on a Friday, and by that Monday, we were up and running with an online store, selling our product online. And so there was a lot of learnings, and it really sort of set the stage then for us to launch our Libra online store, which doesn't have the same regulations as alcohol. So we're able to ship it right across Canada, and so that really kind of laid the groundwork for that. Right.
And for all the people that we hear were consuming too much alcohol during the pandemic, Libra is a great alternative to, that's a thing that we're hearing. People were shut in and alcoholic consumption went up, and in some cases not in a great way. And so that's really a good alternative. I'm glad you brought that in there. Can we circle back around to the B-Corp certification you mentioned earlier? Can you explain that to our general audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So B-Corp is a certification for businesses that would be similar to what fair trade or organic is to, say, coffee or fruits and vegetables. But it's a certification process that assesses your environmental sustainability, your workplace culture, your supply chain, as well as how you give back to the community. So it really digs deep into a lot of areas of your business. And basically, their tagline is using business as a force for good. So, it's really sort of assessing that you're using your business in the right way to pursue kind of a triple bottom line.
Okay. Well, two things you mentioned there we haven't really talked about. The first one is sustainability. What did they evaluate there? What makes you B-Corp certified worthy in the sustainability category?
Yeah. So the way that the certification process is set up, it's based on a 200-point system. And to achieve a B-Corp status, you have to achieve 80 points in a broad section of categories. The way that the questions are worded, it's sort of as a baseline, what are you benchmarking? And are you benchmarking your water usage? Are you benchmarking your electricity usage? Do you have a product life cycle and understand the CO2 emissions from your products? It kind of goes from there in terms of, what are you doing to reduce those things? And have you achieved any sort of environmental certifications? So it kind of is quite in depth, but, in terms of what we're working on, we're definitely Bullfrog Power. So we're 100% green energy. We're donating all of our spent grain to local farmers. We're working on a program to start reducing our water now that we have good kind of benchmarking data. And that was really, as a new company for us, that was really the biggest challenge, as a startup, was trying to benchmark and see, figure out what we are doing in order to start making improvements. So now that we've got that, we're really kind of diving in on.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Even paying attention to what your current practices are, what your current usages are, so then you can make some informed decisions about how you might want to modify that, is what I'm hearing you say. And that B-Corp certification wants to know that you're doing that. Exactly. I imagine benchmarking, that would be an issue. You have to have a little bit of history behind you to figure out what you're doing. So then you can make some changes. How about the supply chain section of that? what about that? Supply chain is in the news these days, as you know, in Canada.
Absolutely. Supply chain everywhere. Yeah. So, I mean, it looks at a number of different things from a supply chain perspective. We look at the percentage of our raw ingredients and packaging material that comes from within a certain radius of where we're located. And then it sort of expands out, so there's always sort of a drive to try and purchase our supplies from local suppliers. It also looks at, the percentage of our suppliers who are owned by women or minorities, which is great. It also then goes even further than that, and every year we do a supplier survey to see, what sort of third-party social and environmental certifications our suppliers have. Are they doing quality assurance audits on a yearly basis? Are they benchmarking their energy usage? All of the things that we're held to account to, we also need to check with our suppliers as well.
Okay, so you're kind of creating an entire ecosystem of companies who care. is what I'm hearing, and
Exactly.
And sourcing locally is a priority. So you're supporting your local economies that are in your surrounding area. Mm-hmm. I think that's all really good. Do you have issues with getting any of your source materials for your products right now?
We haven't run into too many problems. I think the biggest issue that we have faced in the last year is certainly, price increases are affecting everyone. But also, we've had to be, which is maybe a good problem to have, as they say, we've had to be much more organized, and we've had to sort of lock in contracts for our hops and malt and cans much earlier in the year. So, traditionally when we would be doing those things in the fall and putting together a forecast for the next year and reaching out to suppliers, we really had to do it in like June or July. So, that's proved challenging for a small company that's growing really quickly with a lot of different products to try and forecast 8 months out what we're going to be doing the following year. But it was also a really good exercise for us and got us probably more organized than we would have been previously. Right.
And it's all a process, being an entrepreneur, right? And getting everything laid out. And hopefully, as you move forward, it's an iterative process. So now you've gone through that, and you'll see what happens with that forecasting to be able to do it better the next time, right? And that's all about the learning. So What else do we need to know about Upstreet Craft Brewing?
Oh, geez.
Oh, geez. That big open-ended question. What else do you want us to know, Mitch, that our audience would enjoy, or that you just want us to know about Upstreet?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've touched on our workplace culture. I think that, again, kind of circling back to that whole idea of community, and this is something that's been a big piece of our conversation more recently, because up until, very recently, we were a much more, I would say, regional brewery on the Atlantic, on the East Coast of Canada, and our community has expanded quite a bit, and community has always really been something that's important to us. So we donate 10% of our profits back into community organizations. We host a lot of community events. We do a lot of work in the community. So the conversations we've been having more recently is, as our community grows, across Canada, how do we redefine what our community looks like? And I really feel like, that's one of the things when we look at what makes Upstreet special is how people feel, not just our employees, but our customers and the whole community in general feel so invested in what we're doing. So, how can we take that and translate it right across the country?
Well, that's exciting to have those loyal customers that really want to work with you and expand your reach and figure out how to best do that. Like you said, as that customer base expands, and with your ability to ship, especially your non-alcoholic beverage, to further locations, that's going to continue to be something that you'll be figuring out as you go forward. Workplace culture seems to be one of the things that really makes Upstreet stand out, but also the breadth of your products. You've got several different product lines, and it sounds like moving in popularity, you're growing so fast. And I hope that you're challenged with your future forecasting in a positive way. Maybe you totally miss it because you've outgrown it and you have to do more. But in any case, Mitch, I really appreciate you being on the Future Foodcast with us. Thank you for sharing about Upstreet Brewing.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.